Thanks for tuning in to KRTV. We'll have more on regarding arson dog in a moment.
First, a rollover accident shortly at 5 tonight left at least one person injured on River Drive in Great Falls.
It's also creating extensive traffic trouble at this hour. The crash happened at the intersection of Giant Springs Road and River Drive North. We're told one victim has been transported by ambulance with unknown injuries. River Drive is shut down between 25th Street and 38th. We have a reporter on scene. She says traffic is very backed up in every direction of the closure, and we'll keep you updated at krtv.com.
Well, the power is back on for several West residents who spent more than an hour in the dark this afternoon. It was just before 1 p.m. when the lights went off around Central Avenue West all the way to MATL Country Club. More than 2,000 energy customers were affected. Crews from Northwestern Energy do not know what caused the outage, but they say it was likely due to an animal such as a bird or squirrel hitting a power line. The line reset itself shortly before 2. At least one business had to shut down briefly during their otherwise busy lunch hour.
We just started selling what we could, writing it down, and then opening the till and collecting. And then about after a half hour or so, we stopped selling everything. And then when the power went back on, we just threw out all our chicken and food, and we're starting all over.
Wall says once the power returned, they spent another half an hour catching up in the kitchen.
A Great Falls deputies received a tip from police in Harrington, Delaware. According to court documents, Karasevich enlisted in the Air Force after the alleged assaults. He was on active duty at Malmstrom at the time of his arrest and will be held without bond in Cascade County. Karasevich waived his right to extradition, so another hearing will be held tomorrow to discuss his transfer back to Delaware.
Less than a year after the arson dog arrived in Great Falls, she now has to go back to Maine for good. Fire Marshal Doug Benioff was the only person trained to work with Yancy, but Benioff announced his retirement last week, just days after he was handed charges in connection with a man's death back in September. Now the city tells KRTV that the Golden Lab will not stay in Montana. The logistics of how the dog will make it back to Maine have yet to be determined, but city staff expect to work out those details within the next few days. State Farm awarded Great Falls Fire Rescue a $45,000 grant to pay for Yancy and her training. Benioff and Yancy spent a month training in Maine last spring. She was supposed to rule out accelerants on a fire scene, making investigations more efficient.
Statewide temperatures range from the teens to the 40s this afternoon.
Mike is in the Weather Center with the details.
It's quite the dramatic difference as you look from west to east across the Treasure State this afternoon. Check it out. It's 18 in Havre right now, 13 in Glasgow, but in Great Falls, we're sitting in the low to mid 40s where we made it close to 50 earlier this afternoon. It has been quite the interesting day for temperatures. We will look ahead to what you can expect this evening coming up.
All right, thanks, Mike. Today marks the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade.
Protesters and supporters alike gathered across the nation, all of them wanting their voices heard. The decision still sparks politically heated debate 4 decades later. Roe versus Wade was passed by the U.S. Supreme Court with a 7-2 vote back in 1973, officially legalizing abortion in the United States. The debate is often featured on the national stage, but it frequently finds itself at the forefront of local conversation as well.
Planned Parenthood recognizes the importance of Roe v. Wade in ensuring privacy for women to make their own medical decisions. Planned Parenthood feels it's vital to ensure these rights.
Since abortion was legalized in America, more than 30 million women have had over 55 million abortions. 10% of women by the age of 20 have had an abortion, and by the time they're 30, that rises to 25%.
Today, the debate continues regarding whether abortion should be legal at all, and if so, to what extent. Just last year, 19 states enacted measures that limit abortion access to their constituents.
After years of disputes, meetings, and some approvals, the Montana-Alberta tie line is now just weeks away from being put to use, even though work on the Canadian side of the line will not be finished until next year.
KRTV's Beth Beachy takes a look at how this line will impact our community and economy once it's up and running.
Weather pending, Enbridge says the last bit of the line to be strung on the Montana side of the Montana-Alberta tie line will seal the deal on a project that began back in 2005.
So there's about a 2,000-foot span over the Morass River That's the last bit of conductor and OPGW that has to be strung in Montana.
And though Montana's line already has one wind farm out of Cut Bank connected, the entire MATL won't be completely constructed until the summer of 2014. But James says it'll be all hands on deck until then.
The wire crews from here, as soon as they're done with the Marias River crossing, we'll send them north, and they'll start stringing wire in Alberta.
And in Great Falls, local leaders are hoping the stateside completion will open a lot of doors for other wind projects in the state.
Hopefully it will spur additional wind energy in the state. We're known in Montana for our beautiful wind, and it can be productive for us, which will help our tax base and help the economy for Montana overall.
Weber says she has high hopes for the Big Otter project near Belt, saying it would not only create economic opportunity, but job opportunities for our local students immersed in wind technology.
How wonderful for those students to link in and to understand the variety of renewable energy sources Montana can provide.
In Great Falls, Beth Beachy, MTN News.
Enbridge says construction in Montana will be finished in just a few weeks' time, but once spring and summer roll around, they'll send crews back out to construction sites to restore those portions of land back to their original state.
At-home births are growing in popularity, but for many new parents, having a baby outside of the hospital is not their first option.
One Great Falls couple had to improvise last Friday as their new addition just couldn't wait. KRTV's Claire Anderson talks with the parents about bringing a baby into the world in the front seat of their minivan.
It all happened so fast.
John and Jessica had been waiting for the birth of their second child for more than 2 weeks when late Friday night, the unexpected happened.
About 2:15, we made it downstairs and started heading out to the car and made it down to the last step, and my water broke.
Jessica's first child's birth took place at Benefice, and they had planned on having their second child at the hospital as well.
There was no point in time where we were wanting to have an at-home birth.
Jessica's OBGYN had told the couple that a woman's second child is usually faster, but this was a lot quicker than anyone was expecting.
So I figured I still had a couple hours, because with my first one I had 6 hours after my water broke.
The couple had called the babysitter to watch their 2-year-old son, but by the time the babysitter had arrived, there was no time to get to the hospital.
We made it to the front seat of the van, and he laid the seat back, and one more push and she was out.
For John and Jessica, their emotions were running high.
My only thought at that point was, gosh, I hope I don't screw something up.
I think I was more nervous than afraid. It was just the shock of, oh my God, this is really happening.
When paramedics arrived on scene, the baby was crying and laying with Jessica, completely healthy.
The paramedics said she was great and everything was fine. I didn't have another worry about it.
The couple and their daughter Alexis are home and happy, but they have already made plans with their doctor about the birth of their next child.
As my doctor said, we are going to just admit me to the hospital and induce me when I turn 39 weeks, so this doesn't happen again.
In Great Falls, Claire Anderson, MTN News.
Alexis arriving on the scene early, as far as TV goes too. She's 4 days old and here she is. Welcome to the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, what a welcome. Okay, what's happening in weather?
Talking about windy conditions here as we move through the next 48 hours. We have high wind watches and warnings in effect. That watch is for Cascade County and Judith Basin County. This does not include Great Falls. I do not think we will see high winds in Great Falls, but it will get windy. And then you see the warning there for the northern Rocky Mountain front, where winds gusting up to 70 miles per hour will be likely here all the way through Thursday. We'll talk about the wind, we'll talk about the temperatures, and we'll talk about your humidity inside when we come back.